Alright everyone, here are 3 super easy ways to turn The Nightmare Before Christmas, one of the most famous movies of this spooky season, into a terrifying adventure for your D&D campaign. For those of you that don't know, The Nightmare Before Christmas is a classic stop-motion film that has captivated audiences for decades, centering around Jack Skellington, the Pumpkin King, who grows tired of his throne and the terrifying nature of Halloween and decides that he wants something new, ultimately attempting to take over Christmas to a little bit of success, but a huge amount of failure. It's a great story with lovable characters and frightening foes, and with a little bit of tweaking, you can turn it into a D&D adventure to absolutely thrill your party members. And hey, if you want more pop culture content turned into D&D, don't forget to scare the like button by giving it a little poke. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into today's adventure. The story begins with you and your party traveling through the abandoned countryside, exhausted from your many battles and adventures, when suddenly to your surprise, you see a remote village off in the distance that isn't on any of your maps. Somewhat confused as to why or even how there's a village so far away from the nearest city or outpost, you decide to head towards the village, hoping to find some warm food and soft beds that would easily beat out the rations and camping tents that you've experienced so far. Venturing into the town, you notice that the buildings are all constructed of a strange form of architecture that you haven't seen before, as well as a chapel marked with a strange religious symbol that none of you are familiar with. As you press forward deeper into the village, hoping to find a tavern, you begin to notice that residents of the village are staring at you from their doorways and windows, with some even following closely behind you as you continue to press deeper into the village center. Suddenly the tension is broken as a stout and smiling man introduces himself as the mayor of the village and welcomes you to their town. With that, the stout man turns away from you and begins to address the entire village, saying that it's okay and that you are all welcome guests and that there's no need to be afraid. To which all of the residents seem to breathe a sigh of relief, and their intimidating visages now turn to warm and welcoming smiles that greet you and your party. Ushering you all into the local tavern, you are met with some warm hospitality as well as some hot ale to warm your chilled bones, to which the mayor yet again begins to apologize for the rather strange atmosphere of the village, explaining that normally this would be a time of great ceremony and happiness. However, all of the villagers are somewhat on edge due to some strange occurrences that have been happening over the past few days. Somewhat curious, you press the mayor for a little bit more information, to which he explains that normally this would be the time of their Great Winter Festival, centered around gift giving and overall cheer. However, due to some rather strange, grotesque, and twisted version of the traditions appearing up throughout the village, everyone is a little bit uneasy. And these are things like trees being decorated in animal bones rather than candy, and presents where inside of them are live snakes as opposed to gifts, with some of the residents even claiming that they've seen a strange, tall figure peering at them through their windows. Luckily, no one's been harmed. However, the mayor explains that the overall occurrences have really lowered people's spirits and made everyone a little bit scared of the situation. Seeing that you are all clearly adventurers, the mayor hires your party to investigate the strange occurrences and hopefully bring them to an end. In exchange, he promises you gold, free lodging, as well as being honorary guests of the festival that will be ending in the next couple of days. And so, with that, your adventure begins. From here, you all have 3 days before the Winter Festival ends to uncover the source of these strange occurrences and hopefully put a stop to them. And frankly, there is a lot of ground to cover. During your investigation, questioning the villagers and their stories provides you with a couple key points of information. Number 1, you can confirm with your own eyes that what the mayor told you is definitely true. There are strange versions of the traditions of the village suddenly occurring, including the rather peculiar gifts and the bones covering trees. Number 2, some of the more superstitious and older members of the community believe that the village is actually being cursed due to them neglecting some of their more ancient gods. And number 3, some residents aren't even worried about the situation, claiming that it's more than likely just a couple of pranks being done by some local youths who are always up to no good. Aside from investigating the people and their stories, if you decide to research deeper into the village's history as a whole, you uncover a couple of interesting things about the town and its lore. Probably due to the isolated nature of the village, you find that they don't actually worship any of the major gods that you've run into and experienced so far in your adventures, but rather a bunch of lesser gods that each have domain over various seasons. Of note, you see that the god of winter has always been about cheer and charity. However, the god of autumn is incredibly inconsistent, with older records claiming that the god is one of terror and treachery, and more new records claiming that it is one of trickery and fun. And among the ancient and newer records of the god of autumn, even its physical description is a little bit different, with more ancient records claiming that it is a grotesque mass of insects, and others claiming that it is a thin, stalking presence of a skeleton. One claiming that it houses itself deep underground, and the other seeking residence in pumpkin patches and various fields. Each night after your investigation, the village holds its holiday festivities, with dancing and drinking in the center square of the village. However, as you all are mid-celebration, the laughter of the residents is cut short as a blood-curdling scream tears through the night air. You and your party quickly rush to find the source of the scream, to find a young woman leaning over the body of one of the residents that you had interviewed earlier, who now lays lifeless on the ground with their face frozen in terror. Ushering the villagers away from the crime scene, you begin to investigate and find a couple of strange clues on the body. Number 1. While the body is wrapped and bound with rope, and there's a gag inside of the person's mouth, there's actually no sign as to what caused death. No cuts, no bruises, and no sign that a weapon was used. Number 2. Although the body is fresh, it is bloated, and when you inspect closer, you find that it is actually filled with insects. And finally, number 3. There is a strange symbol that you find on a piece of cloth inside the victim's pockets that matches those of the god of autumn that you had investigated earlier. The next day, your investigation continues, discovering information that perhaps you hadn't seen the day beforehand, and at night, yet another victim falls prey, under the exact same conditions as the one that you had seen before. But you've had enough. With more information now at your disposal, you and your party decide to end this reign of terror once and for all. The following night, rather than joining in on the festivities, you and your party closely observe the villagers for any type of strange behavior, to which you find that the village youths that were explained earlier to be somewhat of pranksters are acting rather odd. Stealthily falling behind the 3 youths, lock, shock, and barrel, you catch them all red-handed as they are attempting to yet again capture a villager and put one of those strange emblems inside of their pockets. After incapacitating them, Lock, Shock, and Barrel begin to explain that the cloth emblems serve as a marker to be claimed by the god of terror in an attempt to raise it to its full power. However, they need 3 sacrifices over 3 nights, and you were lucky enough to stop them before the 3rd sacrifice was made. Or so you thought. You and your party were able to stop the cloth emblem from being placed on an innocent civilian. However, you also placed it back into the hands of one of the 3 youths. And suddenly you begin to see that they are stricken with terror and scream aloud as the emblem takes over and they are suddenly filled from the inside out with bugs and struck dead. With that, the ground begins to shake and the 2 remaining youth cultists begin to laugh wildly, explaining that you are all too late and that their god is finally risen yet again. Realizing that you all have to protect the villagers, you question the youths yet again as to where you can find the god and hopefully stop it before it runs into the town. To which they explain that you'll be able to find the god at its residence, and you, having read all those textbooks, know that the god of autumn can be found in a pumpkin patch, and so you head off. Per your assumptions, you head wildly outside the village buildings towards its crops and fields to find standing in the middle of them a large slender skeleton staring at you all with hands outstretched. Whether your party decides to incapacitate Jack Skellington through fighting or actually question him, you're eventually able to understand that Jack Skellington is the god of autumn, but after centuries has grown tired of his throne and wishes to take part in the holiday festivities of winter. In that, although he's behind the rather strange and twisted gifts, he is in no way, shape, or form tied to the strange deaths of the villagers. Jack Skellington then continues on, saying that this sounds more like the original god of autumn, the god of terror and treachery, Oogie Boogie. The ground suddenly collapses, bringing you all down into the cavern or arena of Oogie Boogie, the original god of autumn, who now seeks to claim his throne back from Jack Skellington. Just like in the movie, this fight with Oogie Boogie is extremely dynamic, with the arena being a huge part of the fight itself, causing hazards and various things that your party has to avoid as they fight him. After a terrifying fight against Oogie Boogie in his death arena, you all rise victorious and are able to free the village from these strange happenings. And with that, your adventure comes to a close. If you have a different story that you want me to cover, leave it in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. With that being said, till next time, keep questing.